There's so much that goes into every single transaction that we do as realtors. Today, we're going to give you some insight into what happens in the back end to create a polished product that you see when you work with the Lyons Group.
The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show that explores trending topics in real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. We're a small team of professionals with over $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 successful transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. And today we're going to talk about all the back-end processes that go into the polished product that you see today. And that's not me, because I am not a polished product. But before I get into that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, all three members: Paul, hand me the Rockberry, Aspen, the Ninja Gruen, and the boss, Shannon Martinez. My name is Ben, Total Quagmire Mess Lyons. That's TQM, Paul. Isn't that what it stands for?
For you, yeah.
That's right. That's about right. Our total quality management is what TQM really stands for. And that's why I have the boss here with me, because she puts a cape on me. Right? I mean, I wear the tights, you put the cape on.
That's true.
And then, I stumble down the stairs. So, but there's a lot of information that happens in exchanges on the back end of transactions. And we thought it would be a good episode just to talk about, like, what is all the back end processes that happen so you as a client can have a seamless experience. And I think it's important for you to know as a client what goes on in the background, because a lot of people, they are so focused on the deal, right? The transaction, they really don't understand all that goes into, file storage, compliance, regulations, adhering to local, state, and federal laws. There's a lot to it. So, Shannon, I'm coming to you first. You're the TQM master.
All right.
Yeah. So talk us through, or just walk it through a little bit. Like, what are some of the things that happens in a normal transaction with the paperwork side of things?
I guess what I can say to simplify it for people is, basically, at least for us, what we'll do is from start to finish, we do have processes in place, because you can't miss a deadline. You don't want to make a mistake and forget something on, a purchase agreement, or forget something on your settlement statement that didn't get paid for. So the first thing I know that I do is I love checklists, and I always kind of laugh, like, there's just not a checklist that I don't like. I love checklists because I want to make sure that I've got a list of all the things that need to be done and all the things I should be taking a look at. Usually we do remember, and we've done them for years, but there's a lot of stuff there, and you don't want to lose one. So from start to finish, I would say probably the most important thing is, from taking a listing, I have a checklist of what I'm going to do. Every place that contract, once I get that listing agreement, where it goes, what I need to do from, you've got it signed now I'm going to maybe order some, make sure I've got some covenants headed this way, and I've got some background information, maybe call, check online and see if I can find, permits for the septic. Maybe I'm going to,
pull up a record of the plat, the survey, the covenants,
things like that.
you said.
So I'm going to do kind of the research on that and have that there. And then I need to make sure it all goes out to the right places, that my office gets a copy, that we have a copy, that the customer is getting a copy of their signed documents with, kind of an email of their next steps. And that kind of is from start to finish. Same thing once you are actually get an offer or a purchase agreement, then you want to start, lining out all the dates that are in that contract. What I think years ago, you would just pull out your contract a million times to remember the dates on it, but that's not even possible when you have a lot of files going. You can't possibly do that.
So why is that important to the everyday person that, may buy or sell, right? Or is in a transaction? Why is it important for them to understand kind of what goes into that side of it?
Well, I think it can give people a lot of confidence knowing that we are so structured that we will break that down, and we will have I will have a million notes. I need to order a home warranty. I'm expecting my binder on this day. I'm expecting my home inspections on this day. I put reminders in the calendar. That way, even if we've gotten busy, and there's times where I'll call and I'll say, hey, we've got to have a response to that today. We're not missing deadlines. We've got everything, not only lists of them written down, but we've got them put in our calendar to send us notes that morning, so we know what we've got coming up and what our deadlines are. I think that goes a long way for buyers and sellers, just knowing that we're on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to remember in that, and you're not expected to remember all that. That's kind of on us to remember what next steps to take.
Yeah. Aspen, why would that for a buyer, they're in the transaction with us. We have a contract. They're focused on, all the things that maybe aren't included in the deadlines and the dates. Why is that important to them? That you have someone that is watching after that side of things?
It's important because there's something that buyers put down called earnest money. And if you miss a deadline, let's say you have your inspection deadlines and you decide, I actually don't want to buy this property, there's more work than I anticipated. If you've missed that deadline, you've now forfeited that earnest money. And that goes for all of the deadlines: the appraisal, your insurance, your surveys, title work, everything has deadlines. So if you want to terminate the deal because of one of these deadlines and it's missed, you've now forfeited that earnest money.
Yeah, great answer to that, because there is a lot of liability, earnest money being one of them, in the sense that you lose and forfeit that money if you go over that deadline. Now, if you're within that time frame and you make an objection and you terminate, then you're entitled to that earnest money back. But that is one of the biggest things that a seller has teeth in. If you're a buyer and you're missing your deadlines, it's very easy for a seller to say, look, you forfeited your earnest money at this point. I've acted in good faith and you haven't. And so you need someone with a lot of competence on the other side, keeping you within those timeframes and guidelines. And that is a realtor's role. Right? We should be doing that. But as these contracts evolved, Paul, over the years, they have evolved to a point where to the everyday person, I think they would, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say they're pretty complicated at this point. They're complicated transactions. There's a lot of ins and outs. They got 2 dates. They have 2 dates in the contract for an insurance contingency, for example. But why is that important to understand or to keep tabs of as a realtor? On your end, as a professional, what do you do, Paul, to keep yourself and your clients out of harm's way when it comes to those deadlines?
I think just being aware of the deadlines and starting things right at the beginning, so you don't wait until a deadline approaches to start things moving. One of the big things we have is, being in a small community and there's a lot of work going on, not a lot of inspectors, contractors, handyman, repair people. So if you have something that needs to get inspected, a quote needs to be done for repairs need to be done, and you've only given yourself a window of 2 weeks, you need to start at the beginning of that. A 45-day contract, you don't want to be waiting till the very end to get repairs done either, because then you miss you might not be completed with the repairs by closing. But I think keeping track of the deadlines and moving to get things done well before the expiration of these contingencies is very important.
Yeah. And you can always ask for an extension, right? We get extensions regularly, but the seller can also say what?
No,
I don't want to give you an extension. Like, we have deadlines for a reason. And if you're not hitting those deadlines, then that's a problem. And to Paul's example, with just the home inspection or inspection deadline, right? You have 3 built-in timeframes. Typically, you have the inspection period, then you have the objection period, and then you have the resolution period. Now, they all may be the same date. They may say you have 10 days to do all that, but usually it's staggered. You have 10 days to do your inspection. You have 13 days to give us the objections. You have 15 days to resolve any concerns. And so there's a lot of, the reason I explain that is because there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that need to happen in order to meet those deadlines. And it becomes problematic, like you said, if it's not hit right up front. You don't start that process right away.
Well, and then you have all of those deadlines. And then one of the things that we like to throw in is a contingency for sale. Like, a buyer has to sell their house. So none of those start until that happens. We can start stacking contingencies and deadlines and all kinds of things. So if you don't have a good handle on it at the outset, you're going to miss the boat and put your people in a bind.
Yeah, excellent point, because now you're double stacking contracts and deadlines over deadlines. Now, when do the deadlines kick in? When do they start? When do they begin? Now, we have provisions within our contract that point to that. But as an everyday consumer, if you're a buyer that doesn't buy all the time or a seller that doesn't sell all the time, this is totally foreign to you. Like, this may be something that you're going, I need some direction. So Aspen, you do like a PDF right up front, or some type of a list that has critical deadlines for your clients. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. I'm like Shannon. I've never met a checklist I didn't like. So I pretty much do run everything through the CRM, and that's kind of how I've always done it. But I have, I go in and put important dates and deadlines right at the beginning. I upload the purchase agreement, so I have that. Any notes I have, any communication with them automatically flows through my CRM, so I can easily pull it back up. Kind of phone calls being the exception, that it'll show that they called, but I have to put in notes of what it was that we spoke about. Any important dates and deadlines, I'm sending them a PDF of it, but I'm also sending them a reminder on their calendar so they can accept a calendar invite that it needs to be done by. And then whenever there's an inspection scheduled, I actually schedule the inspection on the CRM as well. So it's all kind of flowing through there. I also send out settlement statements again at the end of the year in case they need it for tax purposes. So I have everything flows through my CRM. But then I also save documents through our work compliance. But then I also save a copy for myself in iCloud, so a backed up copy, because we do have to keep it for 6 years. So if you switch offices, then you still have to take your files with you, because it's up to you to keep track of them.
Yeah, speak to that a little bit more. Why do you have to keep files for 6 years?
I don't remember exactly why, but it's the dates. I'm assuming it has to do with, what is it called?
Well, we have the Real Estate Commission rules and regulations.
Yep. I think it has something to do with statute of limitations. Yep, that's what I was thinking of, because you can sue someone essentially up to that time. So it's really important to keep track of everything. I also download all communication from the file and I stick it in my file too. Not in any organized, great way, but
at least it's there.
It's at least there. Yep.
So if it was ever questioned, and to the benefit of our sellers and buyers as well, right? I mean, because think about how many conversations you have with different people every day, and then a month goes by and you're like, I think that's what we discussed. I'm pretty sure that's how I saw it. But and I know that everyone has a different version of that same conversation. And so it's so important to have email documentation, text message documentation, because you can go back and point to that. Everyone can point to that and say, see, we all agreed. This was the way we were going. This was how we were tracking in that instance. And
I always let people know on a phone call, if it's an important conversation, which you have seen, I say, okay, I'm going to send an email with this too. And then we are all on the same page, and it's no guessing or question. And just for the important conversations, if we're just chit-chatting about how a showing went, then I probably won't summarize that. But if it's actual important decisions that we're deciding to do, I always will send that.
So a follow-up email summary of the conversation. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Paul Berry, a partner at the Lyons Group. We're dedicated to making your real estate experience the best it can be. If you're looking to buy or sell, go to sjcbroker.com and watch our informational video series. These videos break down the process of buying and selling. While you're there, schedule a private consultation with one of our partners. We'd love to sit down and talk strategy and give you a real advantage in today's market. You deserve the best, so take those steps, and we'll see you soon. Now back to the show.
Shannon, let's jump to you real quick. More about the regulation component. We have certain federal regulations that we have to abide by. There's state regulations. There's some local regulations that we have to follow. Why is it important that we do that work up front? And speak to some of those regulations that we need to conform to.
Well, just things like, like I was saying, pulling permits for septic inspections. Whenever you sell a home that has a septic system, you've got to have a new inspection. It has to go to the environmental department for their approval on it, for them to sign off on it. If there is any repairs, there's a certain amount of days where that's going to have to be taken care of, whether the property closes or not. So So being prepared for that, before you even get to that point, maybe having those pulled, that can be a lengthy process. So if you've got those, permits pulled, or say you cannot find them online, and maybe you need to send over a written request to them for them, and maybe there's not, then you know what you're dealing with. You know that you're going to be doing maybe an unpermitted septic inspection when it goes under contract, and it's the middle of winter, and the ground is frozen, and it's going to take a little extra time because there's 6 inches of snow on the ground. It will help you when you're prepared to know we need to jump on this a little bit quicker because we have more work to do. Or, it was just inspected last year. I've got the permits in hand. I'm not really anticipating anything to be, a big deal on it. Doesn't mean you still can't have problems, but you're much better prepared on where you're headed with it and what you need to do. I would say that's kind of one of the state guidelines we have to meet, but there's also a lot of just regulations with the real estate commission of how we're going to do things and how we're going to conduct business. And I think it's also just good for how we deal with our customers. Our customers want information. Some just say, handle it. I don't care about anything, but most of them kind of want at least an update on what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's being done. And, I just think it's best to be above board with everything. Have it in writing, have everything done in a timely manner, foresee problems before they get to be problems. I think that makes it much smoother. If we're doing that job, then our customers aren't doing the worrying about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And fair enough. I mean, I just think about when I take my truck in to the mechanic, it's nice to know, and they come out and they like, oh, we're going to machine this rotor. We're going to do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you for the update. Yeah. I don't know exactly what's involved there.
You're the professional.
You're the professional. It's going to keep me safe, right? Yeah. It's going to keep me safe. Okay, cool. It's going to make my vehicle last longer. Awesome. But I appreciate the update. Right. So I think for the everyday person who is buying and selling property, it's not necessarily that they need to fully understand what we do on the back end, but it's nice to kind of pull back the covers. That's what we're trying to do today. Pull back the covers and let you into the world behind the scenes, because again, all you're getting is this beautiful polished product right there in the middle, Paul Berry.
Mm-hmm.
And
who just makes it look easy.
Just makes it look easy.
Yeah.
He just shows up like a superstar.
But you also appreciate when you're, the mechanic reference, you also appreciate the fact that they come to you and say, look, your tires aren't ready yet, but start planning for this because, they've maybe got, 8,000 miles left on them. And, we have a recall, but, we don't have enough parts available right now, but just know that you're going to be getting a call. Watch for that email or something, that we can take care of that when that comes. You also like the fact that they're your eyes and ears and they're watching those things. That's why you go to a professional, so they can tell you what to expect, what's coming up, what you need to do now. And, that's our job. That's our role in this is, to make sure that those things are being met and we're taking care of that along the way for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said there. What about our, you touched on this a little bit, but Aspen, you want to talk to this a little bit, our broker duties, things like that. Before we can even begin to transact with a buyer or a seller, we have certain things we have to do for compliance purposes. Can you talk to the audience about how that works and why?
Yeah. So in all states now, we have buyer-broker agreements. So we might meet with you beforehand and go over what we are going to do for you. Confidentiality, tracking of funds. There's a lot of things that go into what we do. So now you might, ever since the kind of rules changed a few years ago, you might be sitting down with your realtor beforehand and going over all the different duties that there are. I guess there's so much. Everything we do is pretty much required in compliance. We're not doing anything just because, unless, like Shannon said, we pull the covenants, we pull the permits. There's things we don't necessarily have to do, but that does, technically it's a buyer's investigation period. But nothing irks me more than whenever you go to a professional setting and they say, like, you should know it. Yeah. You should have known. Well, how are you supposed to know? You only do this once every few years. So everything we do has something to do with compliance, but I do think that providing these extra things is really what goes above and beyond.
Yeah. So the broker duties that you have to go through those broker duties with each client, whether it's a buyer or seller. They need to understand what your basic duties are as a realtor: honesty, reasonable care, prompt accounting for monies, disclosure of adverse material facts, things like that. And then you have to actually engage them from going from a customer to actually a client, right? The moment that they sign a contract, they become a client. And then all of those extra processes kick in, right? Now we're in the regulation world where we're having to keep track of all the back end stuff. We have to upload our forms, keep those safe digitally, which we have a great program that we do. And those forms are basically stored. I mean, you were saying 6 years. And I think New Mexico Real Estate Commission in Colorado requires a minimum of 6 years for the statute of limitations, but that's also their overlay on it as well. But we have a great online storage program where we keep those files basically indefinitely until something happens. The cyborgs take over.
And not all brokerages are created equally too, because our office here has compliance, but other offices I've worked at do not. They don't have the checklist. They don't have anyone checking over it, making sure all signatures are there, initials, making sure you have all your documents, your extensions. Not all offices do that. So even though
the last thing you want to find out is 4 years or 10 years down the line, now you've got a lawsuit on hand and you're telling your customer, don't worry, let me pull out my stuff. Let's see what we're looking at, and realize that now you realize you have a deficit in your file. Now you realize you didn't have a form signed or you didn't have it at all.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to find out then.
Mm-hmm. And read the stuff that's sent to you.
Yeah.
That is important. If those covenants, it is important to read. And I've always been good about having people sign and whatnot, but I very much believe in staying in my lane with certain things too. If you want to, build a guest house, I'll look through the covenants, but I expect you to do so as well, because they're just can be so convoluted. If you're wanting something very specific, then it's up to us to get those things to you. And again, even though we call it a buyer investigation period, I would say we do have an obligation to get someone the covenants to see if they can build that shop that they wanted or build the guest house. We're not the end all be all. There's still the permitting process. You still have to go through maybe an HOA or covenant review. There's a lot of other things that go into it, but at least the checks and balances at the beginning, that's our job to find.
Yeah, and for the seller's knowledge too, and that just using that scenario, so the seller knows that the buyer has received a copy of the covenants because maybe it was expressed to them that they can have a shop, and the seller says, "I don't know if you can have a shop," and but we do have some covenants, and the realtor helps the buyer get those covenants, or the title company helps get those covenants, and then they're signed off on, and the seller says, "Okay, good. I know that was a big concern. Seems like that part of it is checked off and moved on." And once that contingency expires, then the buyer comes back later and says, "Hey, I read those wrong, or I interpreted them wrong, or I didn't read them really, and we can't have a shop. Will you work with me?" The seller has every right to say no. You had that opportunity. And so those catches in the background, those things that are built in for us as realtors to help guide through that process are very important. Paul, can you speak to also the contracts themselves, the process of like uploading them and how there's certain checks and balances just here with our office? And maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Like what process do we go through when we get a contract?
It is good for new brokers though to realize it's not just you just have something signed and then it's saved on. What if that program discontinues? What if we go to a new signing program? You need to have your own, you switch brokerages, you need to have your own checks and balances within stuff too. And our office does have a very good.
It's funny because I find also here at least, once we have a contract signed and we've got everything in place, we turn that into our office, and then they have their quality control. So we have, we have Ginger downstairs who basically will look over our contract, and I'm amazed. She'll send me notes and say, "Hey, you forgot initial on this page," or, whatever, the tax code wasn't put in this section over here. It's shocking to me because I think I've gone over, I did that. Okay.
Triple checked it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we don't. So I love the second set of eyes on things. I think that is very, very helpful. And then of course there's things that my office doesn't require that I've got on my checklist. They're not going to say, well, the purchase agreement says that you're they wanted to see the utility bills within 4 days. And where are the utility bills? They're just going to assume that you handled that, But for me, I'm going to make sure it's in our file. It's already, initialed or acknowledged by the buyer, and I've marked it off my list. So there's some things that we do on our side that are maybe a little more than what they require, and things on their side that they require that maybe I wouldn't have gotten. So, it's kind of nice because then, both quality control is coming together at the same time. We're probably overdoing it a little bit. But again, you're not getting 4 years down the line where someone has a problem and you pull out your file and say, don't worry, I've got all the information. Let's have a look at it. And you realize I'm missing information.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Well, and this is
thing
the
that could
biggest
happen.
purchase of people's lives. We probably should have multiple eyes.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's crazy how many times we get a settlement statement back. The lenders looked over it, titles looked over it, and there's a mistake.
Yeah.
We have to add stuff in all the time. It happens all the time because maybe there was an invoice that got missed or something, something small, So, or say assumed something and it ended up being something else. Or like normally the buyer pays for it, but this time the seller's paying for it. There's always little nuances to every deal. So more eyes is better than fewer.
Yeah. So you can go from the total quagmired mess to a true TQM at the end of it. Hopefully, hopefully it works its way through. Because there's just a ton of moving parts. There always is. And I use the example of I get a key. I went to 25th Street and I got a key. The seller said, "Here's my key." And I go, "Okay, cool." And I put it in my pocket. I go, "Okay, that's 25th Street." And then the next day I'm over at, on Mossman, and then the following day I'm over in Schofield, and then I'm talking to sellers and they're going to be, moving at this time, and we're talking about coordinating, whatever we're coordinating. And then the third day I turn around and I'm like, okay, what was this key for? It is, and that happens all the time. And I use the key as an example because that's the same thing with a conversation. That's the same thing with an email or a form that, you were planning on sending out, but you didn't send out to recap a conversation. So these things are very important.
I will say, a lot of times when people don't send something out, they say it gets stuck in their outbox. For some reason, sometimes it does happen to me, for real.
Yeah, for legit.
You know what I do is I hit send when I'm on the go, and then I slam my laptop shut and throw it under my arm, and I run to the next thing. And then, that evening, 7 hours later, I go and I open up and I see it sitting there. I'm thinking, I closed it before it actually left.
That happens to me a lot.
I've done that. Yeah.
A lot of moving parts on the back end, and it's really important to have someone that's competent and several layers of that, several sets of eyes looking at that, because we have a great signing program, and the signing program is wonderful, but our forms program is a little glitchy sometimes. So sometimes we'll go in and we'll add stuff into contracts, and the forms will revert it back to the previous entered. And so once it's added in, you send it off, you think it's good. Well, it reverted it back. And that to me is very scary, because now all of a sudden what you think was, and you reviewed was good, is going out to a client that is not what they were expecting. They don't read it, or they're clicking through it, assuming that it's all good, and then you send it off to the other realtor.
And luckily our state forms is looking into that, because that has been my biggest rub, because I in Colorado, I don't have any of those issues. And also if it's putting it in, sometimes I think there's just something formatted wrong, where it's like you put in the brokerage, but then it changes on another form, the qualifying broker's name to the brokerage. So it's those little things that drive me crazy. It's nice to have these programs, but they definitely aren't perfect.
Yeah.
It's supposed to work right 100% of the time.
And that's not the case.
But luckily the state is taking it serious and working on it.
In fact, Paul, you're very involved with that right now. The selection of a new vendor. You're trying to hide over there.
It's a hot topic.
It is a hot topic. Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely looking into it. There are numerous other programs out there that do a much better job. We should be able to get better service. We have a group that's looking at all the possibilities. So we're going to go over probably, I think on our list is about 8 different programs right now. Hopefully one of them gives us a little bit of improvement. Also, the ones we have, we're finding out that we're not using all of the features of these programs. So we may be able to open those up. But yeah, exactly. We shouldn't be having to worry about mapping every form that we get. There's a lot of work to go into it,
Yeah.
but we're doing it.
Whenever
Yeah.
you think back to your first deal, do you remember how, like, you were like, okay, you're on it, you're checking stuff every day. And then all of a sudden you get 2 deals at the same time and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't keep track of anything. There's so many moving parts.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, now you have 15 going at once. And you have to have the processes set up at the beginning, because it goes from 1 to 2 to 4, especially if you're working a lot. I mean, all of a sudden you better have some checks and balances whenever you're getting a handful of deals going at the same time.
Yeah,
And
because
it can be as simple as things like just not remembering who's on the other side of that transaction. I mean, how many times have you said, oh yeah, 123 Main Street, that's so-and-so. No. I'm working with them on this one. Who is that listing agent on that one? And you got to go look at your notes, before you're sending stuff to the wrong person. So it is about keeping good notes, keeping everything lined out, making sure you have everything in front of you at all times, so you're not making those mistakes. You're not sending somebody else's paperwork to the wrong broker or the wrong customer. You cannot be making those mistakes in our industry.
And one of the things that working at a high level when you have 15, 20 deals going at the same time is not sending one out that everything is mapped incorrectly or it comes back completely blank but signed.
yeah.
Those are the things that these glitches really can hinder, the productivity of when you have
Having to do it twice.
Yeah. You just have to check and check again. I love the fact that, that we'll put something together and then I'll be like, hey, Ben, look over this before I send it out. And he's like, yeah, looks good. Or I made some changes, and then I send it out and then I get it back and then I do it. And then I look over it and I send it to the other side and then we get it back. And then I look it over again when I'm making my list and then I send it to Ginger, and then Ginger looks it over and then she says, hey, you forgot this. And I'm thinking, what the how?
Okay, what the heck happened?
How is that not on there?
this is for a different house.
And I would say with as many eyes as we have on it, most of them come through fine.
Yeah.
But I would rather right away see those things and know those things, than find out at the end of it that we didn't have an initial on something or something right.
And we're always putting pressure on ourselves to up the bar. What can we do if there's ever an instance where we're like, oh man, we just flat missed something? The first finger that we point is right in the mirror. Like, what can we do better? And how can we make this more seamless for the client? And how can we protect people against liability? And we really try to up the bar. And I think that's great. I mean, I think all professionals, if you are a professional, that should be your responsibility to try to hone your craft. So fascinating conversations. We're out of time, believe it or not, on that one. But I think it was important for us to just peel back the layer for a client that whether you're buying or selling, you understand the moving parts that go into the file storage, the TQM, the regulation compliance. All of that plays into the background of having a successful transaction. And we really take that serious. And I think if you're working with a professional in real estate, they should take that serious as well. And ask those questions. As a client, you want to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Not that you have to be proficient in it, but just at least understand the processes that are involved to get to a successful transaction. So, great conversation. Thank you for that. And if you like our content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That really helps us out. We love that. We've crossed 100+ episodes now and over 150,000 views. So we want to thank our audience for all the support. Drop a comment if you have had an instance that you want to share with someone about the TQM, the total quagmired mess, as I would call it. Go to our Facebook page. You can sign up for our newsletter. Paul sends out a fantastic weekly newsletter. We've all got all kinds of great information there. And of course, go to sjcbroker.com. Schedule a private consultation with any one of us here at the Lyons Group. We'd love to sit down with you, whether you're buying or selling residential or commercial. We can give you an advantage in today's market. So thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed and check the show notes below for direct links to our buyer and seller video series. The buyer and seller video series can give you an inside track on taking the right steps in real estate. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group or to schedule a consultation, go to sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in the Den.